Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the ESS Pathfinder, watching the unfamiliar stars of the Carina Nebula stretch across her view screen. 17 years of deep space exploration had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every nerve in her body screamed that something was wrong. "Captain, we're picking up unusual energy signatures," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his sensor station. "They don't match anything in our database." Chen leaned forward, her dark eyes narrowing. "Source: binary system ahead. The signatures are concentrated around the second planet." Rodriguez's fingers danced across his holographic interface. "There's something else. Quantum fluctuations consistent with a civilization, at least level 3 on the Kardashev scale." A civilization. After decades of searching, humanity had finally found one. But Chen's excitement was tempered by the chaotic pattern of the energy readings. This wasn't the organized buzz of a thriving society. It was the desperate pulse of a civilization in crisis. "Take us in closer," she ordered, "but maintain stealth protocols. We don't know what we're dealing with." The Pathfinder slipped through the void, its quantum engines barely a whisper against the background radiation of space. As they approached the binary system, the ship's sensors painted a clearer picture of what awaited them. The second planet was a gas giant, but its upper atmosphere bristled with structures, massive floating cities trapped in a desperate dance with the planet's crushing gravity. And something was wrong. Very wrong. "Captain," Rodriguez's voice cracked. "The planet's core. It's destabilizing. The gravitational fluctuations are increasing exponentially." Chen's mind raced. A collapsing gas giant meant the death of billions. The floating cities would be crushed like paper in a hurricane when the core finally gave way. "Life signs. Billions, Captain. The cities are heavily populated. Species unknown, but their biosignatures suggest silicon-based life forms." Rodriguez paused. "They're evacuating. But their ships, they're not designed for deep space. They won't make it past the system's edge." Chen closed her eyes for a moment. Humanity's first contact wouldn't be a diplomatic exchange or a cultural celebration. It would be a rescue mission on an unprecedented scale. "Send an encrypted burst to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them we need every available ship with deep space capability." She straightened in her chair. "And prepare first contact protocols. We're going in." "Captain," her XO, Commander James Wallace, stepped forward. "The Prime Directive doesn't apply when billions of lives are at stake," Chen finished. "Humanity spent centuries dreaming of the stars. Commander, we survived our own planetary disasters, our wars, our mistakes. We learned to adapt, to overcome, to save ourselves. Now it's time to prove we can save others." The Pathfinder's stealth field shimmered and fell. Across the gas giant's turbulent skies, alien sensors detected the human vessel for the first time. Chen watched as patterns of light rippled across the floating cities. Confusion, fear, hope. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Communications Officer Park announced, "Universal translators engage." Chen took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as saviors. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth ship Pathfinder. We've detected your planetary emergency, and we're here to help. Your core is collapsing, but we have ships coming that can evacuate your people. We have the technology to withstand the gravitational forces. We can save you, if you'll trust us." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the translator crackled to life with a response that would change the course of two civilizations forever. "Unknown vessel," a harmonious, crystalline voice replied. "We are the Lyrani. Our world is dying. Please, help us." Chen nodded to her crew. "Launch the quantum probes. Begin mapping evacuation corridors. And get me everything we know about silicon-based life support systems." She paused, allowing herself a small smile. "Let's show the galaxy what humanity can do." As the Pathfinder moved into position above the dying gas giant, Chen couldn't help but reflect on the irony. Humanity had spent centuries being called Deathworlders by their own scientists, a species that evolved on a planet so hostile it should have killed them. But those harsh conditions had forged them into something unique, a species that could not only survive, but help others survive as well. The rescue mission was about to begin, and with it, humanity's true purpose among the stars would be revealed. The bridge of the ESS Pathfinder hummed with tension as holographic displays showed the approaching fleet of Earth ships emerging from quantum space. Captain Chen watched the tactical display with growing concern. They had ships, yes, but time was running out faster than expected. Core collapse accelerating, Rodriguez reported, his voice tight. New estimate gives us 48 hours at most. Commander Wallace gestured at the display showing the Lyrani cities. Their evacuation ships are too slow. Even with our entire fleet, we can't move 2 billion silicon-based life forms in time. Chen studied the swirling storms of the gas giant below. The Lyrani had built their civilization in the upper atmosphere, using the planet's magnetic field to power their cities. Now that same innovation would doom them when the core finally collapsed. What if we don't move them? Dr. Emily Wong, the ship's xenobiologist, spoke up from her station. All eyes turned to her. Their bodies are silicon-based, adapted to high pressure and specific atmospheric compounds. We can't safely transport that many in time, but maybe we don't have to. Chen leaned forward. Explain. Wang's fingers flew across her console, bringing up technical specifications. On Earth, we developed atmospheric processors to help clean our pollution, stabilize our climate. The technology was later adapted for terraforming missions. What if we could modify it to stabilize their planet instead? Impossible, Wallace interjected. The core is literally tearing itself apart. The core, yes, Wang agreed. But the Lyrani don't live in the core. They live in a 50-kilometer band of the upper atmosphere. We don't need to save the whole planet. We just need to save their habitable zone. Chen felt a spark of hope. This was what humanity did best, finding solutions where none seemed possible. What do you need? Every atmospheric processor from the terraforming fleet. And Wang hesitated. We'll need to modify them to handle the pressure. It's never been attempted at this scale. The forge, Chen said quietly. Every eye on the bridge turned to her. The forge was humanity's greatest engineering achievement. A mobile shipyard designed to build and modify vessels in deep space. It had been created after the Mars disaster, when humanity learned the hard way that sometimes you needed to adapt your technology on the fly. Requesting the forge would require authorization from Earth Command. Wallace reminded her. Chen was already moving to the communication station. Then we'd better convince them quickly. Park, get me a secure channel to command. And find out if any of our ships have a quantum engineer named Patel on board. I worked with her on Mars. If anyone can modify atmospheric processors under pressure, it's her. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. The forge arrived, its massive frame dwarfing even the largest rescue ships. Dr. Patel, found aboard a survey vessel, immediately began working with Dr. Wong on the modifications. The Lyrani, initially skeptical of the plan, provided crucial data about their atmospheric requirements. It's ready for testing, Patel announced finally, her holographic image floating above the bridge. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed the countless hours of work. But Captain, you need to understand. We're pushing this technology far beyond its design limits. The processors will burn out within days. Days is all we need, Chen replied. Just long enough to stabilize their habitat zone while we complete the evacuation. She turned to the Lyrani representative, a crystalline being named First Speaker, who had joined them on the bridge. Your people will still need to leave, but this will give us the time we need to do it safely. First Speaker's crystalline form shimmered with what Chen had learned to recognize as deep emotion. You would risk your greatest technologies, break your own rules of engineering, all to save a species you just met. Chen smiled. On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When survival is at stake, You learn to push beyond what seems possible. Deploy the processors, she ordered. Start with the most populous cities first. The modified atmospheric processors, now resembling massive crystalline structures themselves, descended into the gas giant's turbulent atmosphere. Each one was a miracle of human engineering and desperation, designed and rebuilt in hours instead of years. As the first readings came in, Rodriguez let out a whoop of triumph. It's working. Atmospheric pressure stabilizing in the target zones. Chen watched the displays, hardly daring to breathe. Humanity had spent centuries being called reckless, dangerous, unpredictable. But those same qualities, the willingness to take risks, to challenge the impossible, to rewrite the rules when needed, were now saving billions of lives. Begin evacuation of the outer cities, she ordered. And get me a status report on those processors every 15 minutes. We're not out of this yet. First speaker moved closer to the view screen, watching as the human fleet coordinated with Lyrani ships in an intricate dance of rescue and preservation. Perhaps, they said softly, we were not the only ones who needed saving. Perhaps you needed to show the galaxy that being different, being adaptable, being human, is not a curse, but a gift. Chen nodded, her eyes on the swirling storms below. The impossible solution was working, but the hardest part was still to come. They had bought time, but now they had to use it wisely, before the processors failed and the planet's core finally collapsed. The vast chamber of the forge thrummed with activity as Dr. Patel supervised the final modifications to another batch of atmospheric processors. Through the massive observation windows, she could see the gas giant's swirling storms illuminated by the lightning-like discharges from the processors already in place. Status report. Captain Chen's voice came through the comm system. Even filtered through speakers, her exhaustion was evident. Processors 3 through 7 are showing signs of stress, Patel replied, studying the data streams. The gravimetric shear is worse than we anticipated. We're reinforcing the next batch, but, she hesitated, we're looking at 36 hours maximum before total failure. A new voice cut in, the crystalline tones of first speaker. The inner cities are reporting tremors. The core degradation is accelerating. Chen's response was immediate. Divert all available ships to the inner zones. We're not losing anyone. The rescue operation was unlike anything in human history. Earth's fleet had arrived in force. Massive colony ships retrofitted for emergency evacuation, specialized atmospheric vessels designed for gas giant exploration, even civilian ships volunteering for the rescue effort. But as the hours ticked by, it became clear that even humanity's impressive fleet faced challenges they hadn't anticipated. Medical emergency on evacuation vessel Mercy, Rodriguez reported from his station on the Pathfinder. Their life support systems are struggling to maintain the silicon-based environment. Dr. Wong. The xenobiologist's hands flew across her console. The Lyrani metabolic process releases compounds we didn't account for. Their bodies are literally changing the atmosphere faster than the scrubbers can compensate. She looked up, her face grim. We need to modify every ship's environmental systems, or we'll lose thousands during transit. Commander Wallace stepped forward. We don't have time to refit the entire fleet. No, Chen agreed, but we have something better. She opened a channel to the forge. Dr. Patel, how quick can you fabricate environmental modulation units? For the whole fleet. Patel's hologram appeared, looking skeptical, even with the forge running at maximum capacity. Not the whole fleet, Chen interrupted. Just enough to create safe zones on each ship. We'll concentrate the Lyrani in those areas. Patel's expression shifted from doubt to calculation, using the crystalline matrix designs from the processors. Yes, we could do it. But Captain, it would mean shutting down processor production. Chen looked at the tactical display, where the time until core collapse counted down relentlessly. Every decision now was a gamble with lives in the balance. Do it. We'll have to make the existing processors last longer. The next 18 hours became a blur of constant crisis management. As the Forge switched production to environmental units, the strain on the existing processors increased. Cities were evacuated in waves, with humans and Lyrani working side by side to move billions of people to safety. Processor 4 just failed, Rodriguez announced, his voice tight with tension. A section of stabilized atmosphere began to collapse, threatening one of the few remaining cities. Reroute power from processors 8 and 9. Chen ordered, concentrate the field where we need it most. Captain, first speaker's voice held a note of awe. Your people are showing signs of extreme fatigue. Yet they continue. Why do they push themselves so hard for strangers? Chen watched as another evacuation ship, its crew working well past their safe limits, docked with a floating city. Because this is who we are. On Earth, we learned early that survival often depends on helping each other. Every natural disaster, every crisis taught us that lesson. We're stronger together than alone. A sudden alarm blared through the ship. Core collapse accelerating, Rodriguez reported, his voice sharp with urgency. New estimate gives us less than 10 hours. How many still in the cities? Chen demanded. 300 million, Wallace answered. Even with every ship we have. Then we need more ships. Chen opened a general frequency. This is Captain Chen to all vessels. We need volunteers to exceed safe passenger limits. Every ship that can carry more people, now's the time. Command will authorize hazard pay, and she was cut off by a flood of responses. Ship after ship, civilian and military alike, reported they were already reconfiguring to handle more evacuees. Cargo holds were being converted to passenger spaces. Crew members were giving up their quarters. Private vessels were offering their last fuel reserves. First speaker's crystalline form shimmered with emotion. We had heard humans were dangerous, unpredictable. We did not understand that this same unpredictability, this ability to adapt and overcome, could be used for salvation rather than destruction. Chen smiled grimly. The galaxy called Earth a death world. Called us dangerous because we survived there. But they never understood. Surviving a harsh world doesn't make you harsh. It teaches you the value of every life, the importance of standing together against the impossible. As if to punctuate her words, another processor failed, its light guttering out in the turbulent atmosphere. The race against time was entering its final, desperate phase, and even humanity's legendary determination would be tested to its limits. All ships, Chen broadcast, prepare for phase final. We're going to show the galaxy what humanity does best, the impossible. The bridge of the Pathfinder had gone eerily quiet. 8 hours remained until total core collapse, and the last 3 atmospheric processors were failing faster than predicted. In the swirling chaos below, the remaining Lyrani cities fought against increasing gravitational shear. 200 million still planet-side, Commander Wallace reported, his voice hoarse from hours of coordinating evacuations. The processors won't last another 3 hours. Captain Chen stared at the tactical display, where red warning indicators multiplied like a viral infection. Every solution they'd tried had bought them time, but now time itself was running out. The remaining Lyrani were concentrated in the largest central city, too many to evacuate before the processors failed. Dr. Patel's hologram flickered to life, her face drawn with exhaustion. Captain, I have an idea. But you're not going to like it. At this point, Doctor, I'll take anything. The Forge. Patel's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Its power core. It's the most powerful human-made energy source in this sector. If we convert it to feed the remaining processors, the Forge would be destroyed. Wallace interrupted. Earth Command would never. Earth Command isn't here. Chen cut him off. She studied the calculations Patel had sent. How long would it give us? 6 hours of stability. Maybe 7. Enough time to complete the evacuation. Patel paused. But Captain, someone would need to remain aboard to manage the power conversion. The process isn't stable enough for automation. First speaker, who had been silent during the exchange, moved forward. You would sacrifice your greatest achievement to save the last of our people. The forge can be rebuilt, Chen replied. Lives cannot. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Captain Chen. I'm calling for volunteers for a final mission aboard the forge. High risk, no guarantee of survival. I won't order. No need, Captain. Dr. Patel's voice was firm. This is my project. My calculations. I'll do it. Sanjana. Chen started. I survived Mars. Patel interrupted with a slight smile. Remember, this is what we do. We find ways to save people, no matter the cost. She turned to her engineering team. Begin power core conversion protocols, and someone get me a really good cup of coffee. The next hour was a blur of activity. Ships moved into position for the final evacuation wave as the forge's massive power core was reproposed. Chen watched from the Pathfinder as Patel's team worked, knowing that each minute brought them closer to both salvation and sacrifice. Captain, Rodriguez called out suddenly. Multiple ships reporting in. They're engineers. They're requesting transfer to the forge. They say Dr. Patel shouldn't do this alone. Chen looked at the list of volunteers, dozens of names, from every ship in the fleet. Humanity's finest, offering themselves for one last mission. She felt something catch in her throat. The needs of the many, Wallace said softly beside her. Old Earth wisdom. Accept 6 volunteers, Chen decided. The rest of you, focus on the evacuation. Let's make their sacrifice count. As the chosen engineers transferred to the forge, the evacuation entered its final phase. The massive facility's power core began feeding energy into the failing processors, stabilizing the atmosphere around the last city. Ships descended like mechanical angels, taking aboard every Lyrani they could carry. 100 million remaining. Wallace counted down. 75 million. 50 million. On the main screen, the forge's power readings began to fluctuate wildly. We're reaching critical levels, Patel reported, her voice steady despite the alarms blaring behind her. The core wasn't designed for this kind of output. 25 million remaining, Wallace continued. 10 million. A massive tremor shook the gas giant. Core collapse accelerating. Rodriguez shouted. 5 minutes to total planetary failure. All ships, emergency ascent protocols, Chen ordered. Get out of the atmosphere now. The evacuation ships clawed their way upward, fighting against the increasing gravitational distortions. On the forge, Patel and her volunteer team worked frantically to maintain power to the processors for just a few minutes more. Last ship away, Wallace reported. All Lyrani accounted for. Chen opened a channel to the forge. Patel, get your team to the escape pods. Now. Negative, Captain. Static crackled through Patel's response. Core's too unstable. If we divert power for pod launch, the processors fail. There are still ships in the atmosphere. A pause. It's been an honor. The honor was ours, Chen replied, her voice thick. Godspeed. The galaxy had called humans reckless, dangerous, unpredictable. They never understood that these same qualities, the willingness to sacrifice, to face death for others, to redefine possible, were what made humanity not just survivors, but saviors. As the last ships cleared the atmosphere, the forge's power core finally went critical. For a moment, it shone like a new star in the sky, a testament to human courage and sacrifice. Then the gas giant's core collapsed, and the shockwave swept away all evidence of both tragedy and triumph. But the price of courage had purchased something precious. Survival, not just for the Lyrani, but for the very idea that different species could stand together against the impossible. As the fleet regrouped, carrying its precious cargo of refugees and the weight of sacrifice, First Teacher addressed the human crews. Today, we learned that the true measure of a species is not in their strength or their technology, but in their willingness to give everything for others. You were called Deathworlders. Now you shall be known as Lifebringers. 1 month after the evacuation, the ESS Pathfinder orbited Earth, its hull still bearing scars from the rescue mission. Captain Chen stood in the ship's main observation deck, watching the massive refugee fleet in high orbit. The Lyrani ships, their crystalline structures gleaming in Earth's sunlight, had taken position alongside humanity's vessels in a display of unity that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. "The Council delegation is ready, Captain," Commander Wallace reported, joining her at the window. "They're not quite what we expected." Chen smiled slightly. The news of the rescue had spread quickly through known space, and the response had been unprecedented. Species that had long avoided Earth, calling it too dangerous to approach, were now sending representatives to meet the Deathworlders, who had sacrificed so much to save others. "The temporary habitats are complete," she said, turning from the window. "Let's not keep them waiting." The meeting took place in a specially constructed chamber aboard the International Space Station, modified to accommodate multiple species with widely different environmental needs. Chen entered alongside first speaker, who had become an unofficial ambassador between their peoples. The Council representatives, 12 beings from the most powerful species in known space, waited in their environmental suits. Chen recognized the insectoid Vex, the gaseous Nethari, and others she had only seen in historical records. "We have reviewed the events at the Lyrani homeworld," the Vex speaker began, their translated voice carrying complex harmonics of emotion. "What you did there, it defies our understanding." "With respect," Chen replied, "perhaps that's been the problem all along. You looked at Earth, saw its harsh conditions, and assumed we would be equally harsh. You saw our ability to survive and called it dangerous. You never considered that surviving a dangerous world might teach compassion rather than cruelty." First speaker moved forward, their crystalline form catching the light. "Before the evacuation, we too believed the stories about humans. We called them reckless, unpredictable. We did not understand that these traits, this ability to adapt, to push boundaries, to sacrifice for others, were exactly what we needed." The chamber fell silent as holographic displays activated, showing footage from the rescue. Humans and Lyrani working together to evacuate cities. The Forge's last moments as it gave its power to save millions. Ships exceeding their safe limits to carry more refugees. The loss of the Forge, the Nethari representative began. "Such advanced technology can be rebuilt," Chen interrupted firmly. Dr. Patel and her team knew this. They chose to save lives instead of machinery. That's what humanity has always done. Chosen life, chosen hope, even at great cost. The council members conferred briefly, their private communications hidden behind environmental suits. Finally, the Vex speaker stepped forward. "We propose a new designation for Earth and its people," they announced. "No longer will you be classified as a Deathworld species. Instead, we recognize you as guardians, those who protect, who save, who find ways forward when none seem possible." "A new joint species colony has already been proposed," first speaker added. "A place where Lyrani and humans can live together, sharing knowledge and resources. We will call it New Hope." Chen felt her throat tighten with emotion. She thought of Patel and her team, of all those who had given everything so that others might live. Their sacrifice had opened a door not just to survival, but to a future where different species could learn from each other, protect each other. "We accept both the designation and the proposal," she said, "but with one condition." She paused, making eye contact with each council member. "Earth remains open to any species seeking help or sanctuary. We are what our world made us. Survivors who understand the value of helping others survive." The council's agreement was unanimous. As the meeting concluded, Chen returned to the observation deck. Earth spun below, beautiful and harsh, nurturing and dangerous. The world that had taught humanity its greatest lessons. In orbit above, human and Lyrani ships moved in careful coordination, already working together to build something new. Commander Wallace joined her again. "The first transport of Lyrani engineers just arrived to help rebuild the Forge," he reported. They say they have ideas for incorporating their crystalline technology into the design. Chen nodded, smiling. That's how we move forward. Not by avoiding the harsh places, the difficult challenges, but by facing them together. By turning our differences into strength. As if to emphasize her words, a new ship appeared from quantum space, the first vessel built jointly by human and Lyrani engineers. Its hull combined Earth metals with Lyrani crystals, a fusion of technologies that neither species could have created alone. "Ready for the next challenge, Captain?" Wallace asked. Chen watched as the ship took its place in orbit, a physical symbol of what could be achieved when species work together, when the lessons of survival were turned toward creation rather than destruction. "Always," she replied. "After all, that's what Deathworlders do best, face the impossible, and find a way through. Only now, we don't have to do it alone." The stars beckoned above them, no longer representing isolation and danger, but possibility and connection. Humanity had been forged in Earth's harsh crucible, but they had emerged not as conquerors or destroyers, but as protectors. The galaxy was changing, and the species once feared for surviving a death world would help lead the way to a future where survival meant standing together against the darkness. In the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not their strength or their technology, but their unshakable belief that no challenge was too great, no odds too impossible, when you fought to protect others. They were Deathworlders no longer, but life-bringers, guardians, proof that the harshest worlds could produce the most compassionate hearts.